The year is 2022. After I celebrated my 20th birthday, I was completely unaware about the third installment of Nicktoons Racing's spiritual successor, Nickelodeon Kart Racers. And while we have Kart Racers 1 and Kart Racers 2, um, Bantam Games, Game Mill, and Nickelodeon came back together again just 2 years later after Kart Racers 2 Grand Prix and decided to expand upon the game even more. So 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 Nickelodeon and Game Mill now tasked Bantam Games to create a a, a third entry in the Nickelodeon Kart Racers series, and this resulted in Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 Slime Speedway. Released worldwide on October 14th, 2022 for the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series consoles, and PC, Slime Speedway would be the third entry in the Nickelodeon Kart Racers series. Just 2 years after Kart Racers 2 Grand Prix. Now when I first time bought it at a cheap price on the place in the PlayStation store, I was really surprised on how the game was how the game was on sale and it was cheap. So chalantly I just went ahead and bought it. And as soon as I popped in the game, we I I was I would be shocked to see an intro. It starts with SpongeBob. It starts with SpongeBob being in his boatmobile after a jump, but then a log bomb exploded, and then in came Danny Phantom, Jimmy Neutron, and Chucky Finster, which are racing right after him. The intro gets a little wild, which which was very crazy. We see other Nickelodeon characters throwing items at each other and doing vehicular combat. And at the third scene shot, I saw Garfield and Odie. I'm surprised. I was actually surprised. Actually, as I was actually surprised. Then I saw some more craziness going on in the intro. We see we see Rocco for Rocco's Modern Life, avoiding giant gnomes, and then the intro ends with Cat Dog being hit by a toy ball, while other racers ran right past them, and they went after them. And then we see the green slime he splatter all over the screen. And to my extent, I was actually very excited. What the game is going to be looking like, and it was pretty wild actually. So let's see what the game has to offer. And this is a video about Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 Slime Speedway, a game review. The development on the game started when Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 Slime Speedway was initially leaked by Best Buy on July 8th, 2022, before being formally announced later that day. A trailer for the game was released on September 12th, 2022. Unlike previous Nick Kart Racers games, Slime Speedway now features full English voice acting for all the game's characters, excluding JoJo Siwa. Slime Speedway marked Janet Varney's final performance as Korra, choosing to retire from the role shortly thereafter to allow an actress of color to take her place. The game was originally announced to be released on October 2nd, on October 7th. Although it was been delayed 1 week to October 14th, 2022. Nobody didn't understand why it was being pushed back, but at the matter of which, at least it wasn't a terrible time, actually, so to speak. Slime Speedway now has a DLC pack called the Turbo Pack. It could be bought separately or packaged with the Turbo Edition of the game. The pack includes 2 additional playable characters, Zuko and Eastman and Lara Raphael, along with the additional crew characters and vehicle parts. Alright, that's it. Now let's get into the gameplay wise. Now, as you open the game, it starts out with a crazy intro. The Nicktoons characters racing around, and doing vehicular combat on each other. And right after the intro, you get to the introduction of SpongeBob on a bike with Jimmy Neutron and a few Nickelodeon characters on the slime slide. We'll get to that in a moment. And the UI is pretty cute, actually, with a few characters racing and pretty much by the standards. Although the UI should have been would have been much like the previous Nick Kart Racers game, though. But whatevs. Whatevs. I don't really care, though. Now much of the stuff of the and content has not been changed from Nick Kart Racers 2. Much of the mechanics from Kart Racers 2 is still present, like the crew members and the kart customization. The kart customization was slightly tweaked out a little. Now you'll be able to choose a kart part, a wheel part alongside with the exhaust tips, paint job, and lastly, pick a crew chief member on your team. As an addition to just karts, you now have bikes to the lineup, which somehow turns the game into a Mario Kart Wii game, but with Nickelodeon characters, so to speak. With the new addition of bikes, this means this will add additional racing experience for some Nickelodeon characters now that bikes are now added. Quality wise, while the gameplay is slightly the same as the 2 predecessors, the physics and such were all changed. And also the developers, Bamtan Games, has switched game engines dramatically. The Vector Unit engine, or the Vector engine that they were using, has been completely ditched. And the game now uses Unreal Engine 4, which really explains the great high quality character models and more. As I touched on before, Slime Speedway now features full English voice acting for all the game's characters. Something that was really missing from the 2 previous games. Without voice acting, the characters would be completely lifeless. Very, very lifeless. And honestly, this is actually a good step up from the two predecessors. A lot of people literally said it at best. I mean, this is actually a very good move, considering that the voice actors are still around, could still be able to cast their roles in the characters. However, however, for character roster wise, this is actually the biggest character roster Kart Racers 3 has ever featured. Some of the characters from Kart Racers 1 and 2 remains. However, new additions were added. Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius characters like Jimmy Neutron and Cindy made their grand entrance into the game. Alongside with them, we also got some characters from the Patrick Star Show and Camp Coral. Why was it decided to add Camp Coral and the Patrick Star Show characters? Well, I don't know. Practically, this is Nickelodeon's decision, and I personally can't blame them, though. Although this raises question, and what happened to some of the characters from the second game, like Heifer and Angelica Pickles and Tommy Pickles, though? Unfortunately, Heifer the Wolf and Angelica and Tommy Pickles were cut in the process. Why is this? Well, my only guess is because of some of the voice actors probably don't want to cast a role into one of the characters. I'm afraid, as they have personal things in life as well. Oh, bummer. No wonder one user was saying that Nickelodeon hates Tommy Pickles. First off, Nickelodeon doesn't hate Rugrats nor Tommy Pickles at all. Now, the reason why Tommy Pickles is not in the third game was because of Tommy Pickles' voice actor having some personal life issues and also some personal things that the voice actor has to do. Not all voice actors are not going to cast a role in certain characters, as they got busy things to do as well. So yeah, always gotta respect at everybody's personal things in their lives. And as we all know, not all people are gonna be casting their roles, as they got personal things to do. Besides Tommy Pickles and Angelica Pickles being caught, what happened to Angelica Pickles, though? Thankfully, Angelica Pickles is actually still in the game. However, she went from a kart racer to a chief crew member now. Oh, yeah. I'm probably guessing Tommy Pickles is actually a crew member now, I think. Yeah, I personally don't know. So let's leave it at that. Now, much like the previous games, we get started with a tutorial, which is from the second game, and right after we get started with the obligatory slime scramble mode or Grand Prix. Getting started is picking a character, a cart or a bike, and a vehicle part, and a crew chief, and crew members. Much of the tracks from the previous games make an appearance with now, since it's running in Unreal Engine 4. Much of the tracks were very well designed and detailed, even much more detailed than when they used to be in the Vector engine. However, some of the tracks were cut in the process, and often much of the tracks that I loved in the second game, some of them were not present in the third game. Sad, very sad, which is a real shame, cause the other tracks and in the two previous games were actually well made and designed and made. Pretty much, I was like, wow, the tracks are gorgeous. Prior to the games running in Unreal Engine 4, the drifting model has been tweaked out a little. Meaning when you drift, you somehow start to chain your drifts, which is something that you might see in Mario Kart DS. This being snaking. Yes, snaking. One notable thing that everybody actually loved, and what was the big skill in Mario Kart DS, was snaking. While the three karts from Mario Kart DS would include the Egg 1, Poltergust 4000, and the Dry Bomber, were the kings in snaking. Actually, snaking was a huge advantage in Mario Kart DS. In Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3, however, it is so nice that the developers at Bamtam had brought in snaking to not only keep up your speed and keep your drift boost up, but also take you for a slight advantage. You will now chain your drifts until you get to the blue sparks. Pretty much, you could do a zigzag and snake around each course for a it's a breeze. I love it. I actually love it. While the physics were slightly tweaked, though. Oh, we also get to the return of the watercrafts racing. As in the original Nickelodeon Kart Racers, vehicles will transform into watercrafts at predetermined points in the race to continue progressing through the track. As I talked about before, the pit crew system from Nick Kart Racers 2 Grand Prix returns, which allows players to equip special characters before each race and grant them active and passive abilities. They can only be activated once the slime meter is full. Up to 90 pit crew characters can be unlocked in Slime Speedway. All the core gameplay model modes from the previous games return, such as Slime Scramble, Grand Prix, Free Race, Time Trial, Challenges, and Arena. While character carts can be customized using a variety of different parts, which can affect the cart's gameplay statistics, such as speed or handling, or weight. While each cart body was tied to a specific character in the previous game, Slime Speedway now allows any character to use any cart body, which is actually nice, considering that the specific character can't just drive one cart From the previous game, though, the game features 36 racetracks, 16 of which return from the previous game. As when you progress through the game, new racers, pit crew, and vehicle parts can be unlocked by winning cups in Slime Scramble, completing challenges, or purchasing them with slime tokens at the in-game garage. Slime Speedway supports up to both 4-player local split-screen multiplayer and online multiplayer for up to 12 players. At first glance, this might be the best kart racer game according to some people, right? Sorta. It definitely is the best. It definitely is the best Nick Kart Racer game of all, and it really felt like more of a Nicktoons Racing spiritual successor, and it's much better than the two previous games. But I personally have to disagree. I like the second game though because it's pretty fun. While Kart Racers 3, however, while it's still fun too, it's not without the flaws in the game, which this will be covered later on. So when you progress through the game, you are rewarded with pit crew characters, vehicle parts, which I just mentioned, and more. This is another thing. You can now buy characters in the garage store. Depending on how much slime tokens you collected along when you're racing, you'll be able to get every single character. Well, some of the characters have to be unlocked in the challenges. One notable aspect of Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 Slime Speedway is that it now antes up of eight racers to 12 racers, which is seen in Mario Kart Wii and 8 Deluxe. And honestly, anteing up the racer position from 8 to 12. This will cause extreme chaoticness, which is actually part of what the game is truly about. Kart racers are meant to be fun, and it's supposed to be fast paced with fun, speed, and chaos. This is what Mario Kart Wii was meant to be like. And this is what Mario Kart was meant to be like. It's supposed to be fast paced racing. Though that's just like what other kart racers would do. While kart racers just not only impresses the casual racing fans, but the arcade racers in general. Don't forget, kart racers are also subgenre to arcade racers. While Nick Kart Racers 3 Slime Speedway was praised by fans and the critics, up on Metacritic, it had gave the game mixed or average reviews, just like the second game. Shack News appreciated the number of characters, tracks, and modes, and voice acting, but ultimately calling it as average of a kart racer as it gets. Nintendo Life even praised the voice acting as well, but heavily criticized the performance of the Switch version, saying it runs with a severely reduced frame rate compared to its predecessor, making everything feel more sluggish as a result. The game ran at a horrible, probably 20 FPS. That's a terrible frame rate in my opinion. But all in all, even if you get the Nintendo Switch version, you could play it on the go. Actually, I mean, you have Mario Kart 8 on the go. You got Burnout Paradise on the go. Why not Nick Kart Racers on the go? Oh, either it's that or what happens if you start being bored of Mario Kart and wants to play with the Nicktoons characters in their kart racing game? There. Try to think before making a mistake. Now, while everyone does love the game, it would not be fair to talk about its major criticisms with the game. Regarding the online multiplayer, it's been botched actually. Unlocking everything became a serious grind according to some people. When I looked up Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 on YouTube, I just especially unlockables, I was pretty confident saying that I might be able to unlock everything. But I was wrong. I can only unlock everything in offline mode. How the rest of the unlockables, like the pit crew characters, like the pit crew members and chiefs, can be unlocked via the online multiplayer wall. Seriously right now. Also another notable aspect that looms on the horizon in the form of unlocking everything, unlocking some of the things when you're playing the battle mode, which can be a serious grind if a few people actually mentioned how many free online wins and such, how to get the rest of the unlockables though it's pretty satisfying to know how to unlock much of the online multiplayer exclusive things very well. Although everybody today still doesn't play the game at all anymore. So let's just so what's the problem with online multiplayer? Regarding online multiplayer, one of the players on the internet, especially on YouTube, made a serious rant about certain unlockables being unlocked behind the online multiplayer wall. And one of these unlockables is a character which everybody fondly remembers, Helga from Hey Arnold. Everybody was kind of confused and was completely concerned. Why was Helga unlocked behind online multiplayer? The only incentive to unlock Helga is by going on online multiplayer. Now, it could be great because it might have crossplay, right? No. No. Sadly, no. Now, considering that Bantam Games is learning how to use Unreal Engine 4, they didn't unfortunately they didn't try to include crossplay in the game, which can be a serious problem. And what I mean by serious problem means that with since that if Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 don't got online multiplayer, you're kind of out of luck, and you're kind of out of luck, bud. If it doesn't have crossplay, then that means trying to unlock much of the unlockables that you're trying to get for 100% completion will make it really difficult. Now, in addition to this poor decision, that Helga, which is still in Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3, is still in Nickelodeon Kart Racers right now and today, now has to be a lot behind the online multiplayer wall. More importantly, a bike body is also has to be unlocked via online a multiplayer. You have to do 138 free race. You have to win 138 free races in order to unlock it. Oh my freaking goodness! Since nobody isn't playing the game, what is even the problem here? Again, there is no crossplay. Without no crossplay, let's just say that without crossplay, you won't be able to play with anybody who either has an Xbox or PlayStation 4 console or has a PlayStation or Xbox console, meaning you're only be able to play meaning whatever version of Nick Kart Racers 3 Slime Speedway you're on either it's a PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, or Xbox Series consoles. You can only play with the certain Xbox or PlayStation players, depending on what console you got, especially the Switch version. And when I got even after I got the game back then when it was on sale, it was already too late as nobody wasn't playing the game anymore. According to one of the users, nobody doesn't play the game anymore, and worst off, Bantam Games got away with it. Surprisingly, meaning one user on YouTube suggested everybody to contact Game Mill, Nickelodeon, and Bantam to fix this online multiplayer unlockable issue. Unfortunately, there's no point of contacting them as they didn't even bother to begin with. This is right around the point that this is another problem with the licensed video games problem. Developers doesn't really care or did not put any more effort into the game. And also, let's just say that the project was kind of pretty much rushed, and also let's just say that much of the items or power-ups or weapons and such in the game are in a poor, unpolished state. Garden gnomes are now in the air and not coming down onto the ground instead. When being fired, the jellyfish no longer flies up and dives down on the first place racer as it only zooms right after the first place racer and just gets stuck onto the racer and shocks it in the process. Yes. The toy football weapon also does the same thing. However, it zooms after another opponent and then gets stuck onto the racer and then disappears, making the opponent spin out. Instead of just flying in right after the player and then just hitting it and then just disappear, like how it is in the Vector engine. Also, more importantly, when you're accidentally bumping into opponents, they tend to fly off the track. They tend to fly off the track into the ground. They tend to fly off the track, or what else? Drop from the track. This ends up an annoyance. Even Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2 never had that kind of issue, and that's because it was in the Vector engine. And as for Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3, much of the item power-ups and the physics and such were pretty much botched. Now I understand why Bantam Games didn't have the good amount of effort to fix the issues because they're a small production team in terms of people and budget. The company is made up of 40 people. 40 people. That's a small company with a small amount of people. I mean, a lot. There's supposed to be more people to help and support for the game. Actually, it could have been much more. This would have been much more better if Bantam hired more employees, and not just that. At Nick Kart Racers 3 needed more time in development, and instead of being a rushed project. At that and it's and besides that, it just fell into one of the same trappings as a dangerous driving's problems. Um, Remind me to tell you what dangerous driving is. Dangerous Driving is a arcade style boring racing game developed by the people from Criterion, Three Fields Entertainment. Gamer Alex already made a video all about Dangerous Driving, which tried to be a spiritual successor to Burnout, but it fell short into recapturing that spark, as it too had an unpolished experience. And get this, Dangerous Driving is another Unreal Engine 4 racing game. We also cannot forget about somehow the horrible monetization that the third game has. Actually. Yeah, probably. $50 USD, with the Turbo Edition being $60 USD. Just think about that for a second. Not only was the game not polished enough to justify that price tag, but it doesn't have that much content at all. What was Bantam Games even thinking? More importantly, what was Game Mill even thinking, actually? Seriously, right now? Oh, $50 and $60 USD on an Unreal Engine 4 racing game? Bro, get real. Oh, seriously? Not only the game was not polished enough to justify that price tag, but there was not enough substance to keep for that price. Just for example, we got it's. Oh, just for example, just like what Gamer Alex did with Dangerous Driving, I would compare Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 to two other Unreal Engine 4 racing games, Trail Out and Grip Combat Racing. I know there are two different scenarios, but for Grip Combat Racing, it was developed over many years. Yes, it's been developed over many years in early access, and it was helped by a Kickstarter campaign and a publisher. And here's this: Grip Combat Racing is developed by a small indie team, which too got mixed or average reviews. And here's Trail Out, which is another Unreal Engine 4 racing game. For Trail Out, it has been developed for a few years. And here's this though. That is developed by another indie team. And this indie team of Trail Out was named Good Boys LLC. I mean, and also for Grip and Trail Out, they don't have horrible monetization because they're priced at $20. Sometimes they would go on. They also at times their two games would go on sale at a good price. And also they offered a much more content than Dangerous Driving and Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 ever. And besides that, Nick Kart Racers 3 is just no match to Trail Out and Grip. which kind of goes back to one of the reasons why nobody won't be paying $50 to $60 for arcade racers unless if they're packed with a lot of content. Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 is another example. It doesn't have that much much abundance of content at all. It just feels pretty minimum, actually. Seriously, seriously, and also for Ben 10 games, they should have had more time in development of the Kart Racers 3 game. Pretty. This is pretty sad. While Bantan Games is still learning how to use Unreal Engine 4, they gotta learn how to do things properly. Physics, um, vehicle physics and other things are very hard when it comes to making racing games, and also physics are hard to do for during racing game development. And while they don't have to be perfect, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's hard for Bantan Games to learn how to use Unreal Engine, since Bantan Games is a small production in terms of people and budget. In the end, while Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 isn't being updated right now, it's still a fine game, despite the issues. Although the reception on Steam, and especially on Metacritic, from players is really mixed. It's a real shame that the item power ups were screwed and were botched up. Especially how the AI and other sorts were not being worked on properly. Similar to Mario Kart 7 and DS, the characters stay still very statically, while they still fire items and weapons, and also get this, they don't use crew chief members at all, like in the previous game. That and yet that's another major criticism for it. There's a lot of problems you see every day. There's a lot of things that you don't see. All in all, I believe that Bantam Games switching engines was a huge mistake. Switching to Unreal Engine 4 really hurts, and it's a major, huge, big mistake. Big mistake, Bantam. Why can't you just stick with the vector engine? I know you wanted to switch game engines, but this is a huge mistake. Not only that, but Unreal Engine. I know the Unreal Engine application is a great game engine. Far from it, but it's not perfect. Unreal Engine 4 games tends to crash, and that depends on how developers are not putting much effort or not polishing certain games properly. Come to think of it, certain game developers should not be using Unreal Engine in the first place, because video games tend to crash in the engine, and it's not pretty. Some While some people may not agree with may not agree with me, but I'm actually telling the truth that while Unreal Engine 4 is great and graphically detailed compared to other game engines, and but but video games can be overpriced when doing so, especially when they're not polished properly. So all in all, in the end, Bantam Games should have just sticked with the vector engine instead of switching to Unreal Engine 4, which is a real shame. Bantam Games really needs to learn how to use Unreal Engine 4 well and properly. However, while I still enjoy Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3, considering that I kind of find it very funny, cool, and stuff in particular. It's still a nice, unique little racer, though. But however, while it is nice to see it running in Unreal Engine 4, it would have been much better if it was in the Vector engine because Unreal Engine 4, while it is a graphical great engine, though, I may slightly have to personally disagree on that because the Unreal Engine tends to crash because of certain issues and more. I mean, most of the issues that I just mentioned and such, including its bad monetization, really says true volume. A prediction about Nickelodeon Kart Racers 4 is up for grabs according from one of the YouTube users. Now now I just don't know if I don't know if it's gonna happen or not. But if it is I hope Bantam Games will not be doing the same mistakes again. Uh even even a few users said it best on Twitter. I mean X, saying that putting unlockables, the rest of them, behind the online multiplayer wall was a poor decision. And according to one user on X, even another user asked, how many wins does it take? How many online free races does it take to unlock Helga? And I just said 18 online free races. Unless unless if you have another PlayStation 5 console or something to try and unlock the rest of the stuff, then you might be in luck. Now now well now for the big list. The big character roster, the additional bikes alongside with voice acting and such. There These are one of the core aspects on a project that is completely intact. That those are the positives. But for the negatives, some of the bugs, the technical difficulties and such, like geometry paint jobs, somehow not being graphically detailed and such, and be a little blurry. They can is very tough. Honestly, by the standards, I believe that Bantam fell under the one of the same trappings as of what happened to Pseudo Interactive. Just like Pseudo Interactive, if the team had to rework a kart racers game to to another game engine, and as they had to rework a kart racers project, and on top of that, adding more new content, less than a few months. That's a death sentence for any game. And Full Auto 2 Battle Lines had suffered through this issue. Ooh, when Pseudo Interactive had were making a sequel to Full Auto 1, which was released exclusively on the Xbox 360. As what Gamer Alex just mentioned, Pseudo Interactive had to rework an Xbox 360 game to the PlayStation 3's difficult South processor. And on top of that, adding more new content for Full Auto 2 Battle Lines. In less than a few months' time. That's a death sentence for any game. All in all, this would be what all in all, while most game engines are not perfect, much developers need to have more people, more time, and development. and for also and also, I'm just hoping we get more arcade kart racers, or especially more Nickelodeon kart racer sequels in the future. With a prediction of Nickelodeon Kart Racers 4 up for grabs, Bantam Games needs to do more effort, time, and development, and have a lot of people supporting the game just to make sure that they will not make the same mistakes again. Besides, just like what would happen with Three Fields Entertainment, Bantam Games would hoping that Bantam Games like Three Fields Entertainment with Dangerous Driving, hopefully they will not make those same mistakes like what happened when developing Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 ever again. In conclusion, while Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3 is a fun racing game among kids, teens, and adults who love this type of kart racer games, the 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 game is still fun. Far from it. However, some people would not recommend it as it's a mixed experience with graphical issues, glitches and bugs. They exist because there was no time to fix them, which which really breaks me. Bantam Games, who did no fault of their own, really speaks true volume. As switching game engines and trying to learn how to do them takes some time, and such, which really is understandable. Hopefully, hopefully, Bantam Games will try to learn from their previous mistakes from Kart Racers 3 and make Nickelodeon Kart Racers 4. Hope you guys enjoyed the game review. I'll see you guys next time.